Hey everyone, it's been a little while since the last video. I was expecting Battlebit's playtest to last me a little while, but that crashed and burned an hour after going live. So much so that it was postponed for a later date. So between being busy and having nothing else to play, eventually I landed here. And boy, I am glad to have played this game. And today, we are gonna mend that content drought by paying a visit to a little indie title that has been eating my time these past few days. This is Project Zomboid, and just like the previous videos, we are gonna sort of review it, and by the end of it, hopefully you'll have an idea of whether or not to invest your time into it. And this is a game that I had been meaning to purchase for quite a while. Years even. But for some reason or another, I kept skipping it. Until just recently, where I figured that I had time to give it a shot. So what is this game? Project Zomboid is an isometric survival horror hardcore RPG-esque experience. You create a survivor and give it negative and positive traits to customize the experience to your liking. Your character must develop skills in order to survive efficiently. Things like cooking, carpentry, mechanical work, tailoring, blunt weapons, aiming, reloading, sprinting, nimbleness, etc. And it is in your best interest to develop these skills if you plan to survive beyond the first few minutes of the outbreak. The gameplay is heavily focused around simulating survival, from foods and water needs to depression, anxiety, and even irreversible zombie infection. The game's difficulty is further amplified by the behavior and intelligence of the zombies, who will constantly remind you that no strategy is infallible and no hiding place is good enough. Alongside that, the setting of the game and the world it builds around you as you survive your first few days in Apocalypse further increase the sense of urgency and desperation no other piece of media can. The game takes place in Knox Country, a semi-fictional location that simulates some areas around Kentucky, USA. An outbreak of a mysterious infection reanimates the dead, and with their unending hunger, Knox Country goes from being a once peaceful and uneventful location to becoming the very gates of hell. And if you pay attention to TV and radio stations during the first few days, like all zombie outbreak stories, it all begins with an exclusion zone, government ineptitude, denial, fear, and it quickly descends into chaos as the infection spreads outside Knox Country into the rest of the world. The eerie part of all of this is further amplified by things outside your control. TV and radio stations stop transmitting after day 9, where the entire world faces the outbreak. Power and water will eventually shut off, forcing you to rely on rain and generators to acquire these valuable resources. Food is gonna spoil and rot away, forcing you to stack up on canned goods or even commit to farming and hunting. Climate also plays a role in here, with cold and warmth having positives and negatives that you must adapt to. Weapons you find or craft will eventually break. Guns and ammunition are scarce, and their loudness will attract hordes of the undead. As you can see, this is not a simple game. Any mistake you make can and will more than likely end in your fatal demise. The game's counting on it, and sooner than later you will slip up. As a hardcore mechanics game, the moment you die, you lose the character forever, including their experience and skills that they had developed. Heck, if you continue the world playthrough, you might even find that character wandering around as a zombie. As crude as it sounds, the odds are always stacked against you, and it's up to you to figure out if the next move you make is a worthy investment. So, after experiencing this game for 51 hours and craving more of it, I can easily make the conclusion that I made the mistake of not playing it earlier. Project Zomboid is in no way, shape or form another zombie game to pile on an ever-growing list of forgettable games. This zombie survival simulation-esque adventure has no business being this immersive, and yet it delivers some of the most gut-wrenching moments I've experienced in a video game. Especially once you start changing the sandbox and modding some things around. As you are seeing from the gameplay, I definitely got mods installed. I've got silly ones like Brita's weapon pack for guns and gun mechanics, but I've also got gameplay altering ones like custom zombies, which is gonna allow me to have shamblers, fast shamblers, sprinters, crawlers and fake dead corpses on the same run. Sandbox wise, I've made the zombies count high, the zombies are fragile and their strength is random. And to spice things up, the infection's transmission is locked to saliva only, with the infection being extremely lethal as getting bitten means instant death and reanimation. And you might think that having guns and ammunition drastically reduces the odds of getting overwhelmed by these Zeds, but this could not be further from reality. The zombie numbers force me to constantly scavenge for ammunition. Fast and regular shamblers may stalk every corner, and even when mowing down their numbers, any moment of respite ends quickly when a couple of sprinters decide to wreck my day. And believe me, most of my runs have ended due to unforeseen consequences when facing sprinters, but even regular zombies can end a character when playing recklessly. My guns may jam, my character might trip, running into the horde, running out of ammo, my car crashes into a forest in the middle of the night, I make a run for food only to become food myself, and most importantly, and often the cause of my character's demise, nicotine addiction. And this is where you remember that you are playing a video game, and things are gonna get a bit silly from time to time. One of the most used traits in the game is Smoker, as it grants you 4 positive trait points, but as a penalty it's going to raise your stress levels when you haven't smoked recently. The stress levels will rise quickly, and in turn this can make your character sad. However, you can further increase your positive trait points by taking Hemophobic, which is gonna stress you out when you become bloody and also causes panic when treating your own wounds. Combining these 2 traits means that your character will become quite literally stress personified. Early on, when you are using any melee weapon you can get your hands on, you'll become bloody often, and in turn this is gonna stress your character. The stress is gonna rise quickly, and even more so when you haven't smoked recently. This will eventually make you sad and unhappy. A sad and unhappy character is slower, and a stressed character is weak melee-wise. Combine both and now you're feeling dread and desperation, both in-game and outside. Congratulations, cigars are now part of your daily diet. Because of this, all looting runs I have done quickly become a cigarette scavenging adventure. But acquiring the priced rolled nicotine is not enough. In order to smoke those ciggies, you gotta have a pocket fire source, aka a lighter or some matches, and sometimes you might find dozens upon dozens of matches but no cigars. And other times you'll have enough cigars to last you a couple of lifetimes, but no device to ignite them. So while mowing down hordes of the undead may seem a bit wacky, considering the game's purpose, it is kinda justified when you realize your character is an addict and desperately needs those cigars. Funnily enough, there are smoking related mods in the workshop. From automatic smoking when both cigars and lighters are in your bag, to quite literally mods that allow you to ignite a cigar with stoves, cars and other fire sources. It is hilarious to see how far people go to use cigars, though somehow logical if you think about it. Anyway, so far we've been praising this game. It should be clear by now that I am having an absolute blast with it, but I do have a few gripes with Project Zomboid. For example, certain game mechanics should be a base part of the game and not expanded upon with mods, like the custom zombies configuration one that I mentioned previously. The sandbox options allow you to have every zombie's speed and strength randomly generated, and yet when this setting is selected I feel like every other zombie is a sprinter. This is why I installed the custom zombies mod. That way I can limit the frequency of each zombie type more precisely rather than leaving it to dice rolls. This in turn makes the experience a more methodical one instead of a sprinting marathon. Another one I don't like, but this one is more due to the overall game, is how derelict the world feels early on. This will more than likely change when NPCs are introduced, and heck, playing multiplayer removes the feeling as well, but right now being the sole survivor gets way too lonely. By the time the TV and radio stations shut off, the sense of solitude starts creeping in. Of course, it adds to the experience, but in my opinion it feels way too hopeless once silence fills the world. And finally, I'd like to see a bit more world building. What I mean by this is that I'd like to see more consequences of the outbreak fill the world. Crashed helicopters, crashed planes, more variety in car crashes, scorched buildings, piles of unfortunate people littering the streets, etc. This sounds a bit morbid and contrarian to my previous complaint, but I think they go together since the world is big enough for things to remain relatively simple all the time. I don't know, I think that it could be more immersive to see the effects of the outbreak outside of the zombie hordes. But those are my negatives. Not too many, but I may be a bit biased on this one due to how much fun I've had with it. Overall though, this is a game that you definitely don't want to skip. It is good as it is and becomes excellent once you customize the experience to your liking, through the sandbox options or mods. This is a game that is not for the faint of heart and a lot of mistakes are gonna be made and repeated. The beauty of Project Zomboid doesn't live in the crude and merciless gameplay, but rather in your ability to adapt and survive a challenge like no other in the industry. But with all of that said, that's gonna be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching the video. Take care and until next time, peace out.